Okay, it's 3 a.m. I know I threw it out. I swear to God, I buried it. But it's back. And I think it's heading for my son's room. I don't know what to do. Okay, look. I need to explain how this started. I have to get this out. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Or maybe I'm not. And that's what really terrifies me. This all started because, as these things so often do, I just wanted a little bit of peace. A little bit of parental leverage. We'd just moved into this house. It's an older place. The kind with character. Which is just a nice way of saying it has drafts, and the floors creak in ways that make you think someone is walking right behind you. We were still drowning in boxes, in that moving in chaos where you can't find a single coffee mug, but you've somehow managed to unearth a single lonely Christmas ornament. For me, that chaos was amplified by my son, Leo. Leo is a force of nature. He's 7, and he has this energy that could power a small city. If you could just harness it for good instead of for, say, climbing the bookshelves or testing the structural integrity of the drywall with a toy hammer. He isn't a bad kid. Not at all. He has a good heart. But his impulse control is a work in progress. And with Christmas coming, his special brand of chaotic energy was hitting its annual peak. Every year, my key to surviving the festive season has been a little helper, a tradition that I know is divisive. Some parents find it creepy, others swear by it. I'm talking, of course, about the elf on the shelf. It's funny when you think about it. The whole thing started with a family tradition the Aebersolds had back in the 70s. Then, in 2005, they decided to share it with the world by self-publishing a book and a little doll, and somehow, it just exploded into this global phenomenon. The concept is pretty simple. A scout elf watches your kids, flies back to the North Pole each night, and reports to Santa on whether they've been naughty or nice. It's basically a behavioural management tool dressed up in a festive costume. For a mum with a kid like Leo, it was less a fun tradition and more an essential part of my parenting toolkit. Our old elf was named Barnaby. Your standard issue elf, all red felt and a cheerful printed-on face. Leo had a love-hate relationship with him. He'd argue with Barnaby, plead his case, and occasionally try to build traps for him. But he also knew the main rule. If Barnaby saw him misbehaving, the report to Santa would be bad. And it worked. For 3 years, Barnaby was my Yuletide secret weapon. But in the chaos of the move, Barnaby vanished. I'd torn apart every box labelled Christmas, sifted through acres of bubble wrap and tissue paper. Nothing. He was gone, probably sitting in a landfill somewhere, still smiling that vacant, cheerful smile. And with December 1st, right around the corner, I was getting desperate. Leo's behaviour was already trending into lump of coal territory, and I needed my little spy back on the job. That's what led me to the car boot sale. It was a miserable Saturday morning, the kind where the sky is the colour of a dirty dishcloth, and this fine mist hangs in the air, making everything feel damp and cold. I hate these things. They always smell of decay and forgotten hobbies, trestle tables loaded with other people's junk, chipped mugs, old electronics, clothes that have long since given up. I was about to give up myself, ready to just accept a Christmas of chaos, when I saw it. It was lying on a stained fleece blanket, surrounded by rusty tools and porcelain figurines with dead eyes. It was an elf doll, but not like Barnaby. This one was older. Its suit wasn't felt, but a heavier velvety material. The red faded to a dull maroon. It had a small hand-embroidered bird on the breast pocket. It was faint and discoloured with age, but I'm pretty sure it was a white crow. Its face wasn't cheerful plastic. It was porcelain, or something like it. The smile was just a thin, precise red line, but the artist had given it this slight, almost unnoticeable curve at the edges that didn't feel happy. It felt knowing. The eyes were the worst part. They weren't printed on. They were little chips of dark black glass, and they seemed to catch the grey light in a way that made them look like they were watching you. His hands and face had a network of fine cracks, like old china. It was clearly used. Pre-loved. Or maybe pre-owned is a better way to put it. The man running the stall was on a folding chair, nursing a cup of tea. His face as weathered as the furniture he was selling. I picked up the elf. It was heavier than I expected. "How much for this?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked from the elf to me, and a strange look flickered across his face. Not a smile. Something else. Apprehension, maybe. "Take it," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "No charge." I was stunned. "Really? Are you sure?" "We've had him long enough," he said, his eyes fixed on the doll in my hands. Have you got kids?" He continued. I replied, "Yes, just the one boy. This is going to make him. Make sure he's a good boy around it. It watches," he interrupted. "Yes," I chuckled. "We know the drill." But the man didn't match my tone. "Just watch him around it." I should have stopped right there. I should have put the doll down and walked away. The guy was weird. The doll itself was creepy. Every alarm bell was going off. But I was desperate. I saw a solution to my problem. A free one. So I just mumbled my thanks, tucked the doll into my bag, and hurried back to the car, feeling its strange, dense weight against my hip. When I got home, I showed it to Leo. He was not impressed. He poked it suspiciously. "He's creepy," Leo announced, with the brutal honesty only a 7-year-old can deliver. "His eyes are weird." "He's just old," I said, with a cheerfulness I definitely didn't feel. "He's vintage. He has more experience reporting to Santa. We have to give him a name so he gets his magic." Leo shrugged, already losing interest. "Fine. Pip." And so, Pip it was. That night, I placed him on the mantelpiece right in the centre, with a clear view of the entire living room. His little glass eyes glinted in the lamplight. I told myself it was just a doll. A creepy doll, yeah, but still just a doll. I went to bed actually feeling a little relieved. My spy was in position. The Christmas season was saved. I was so wrong. The first morning, I came downstairs, and Pip was gone from the mantelpiece. My heart did a little flip, a mix of, "Oh, good, this is working," and a flicker of something else. I found him sitting on top of the cupboard, perched high on the cat litter bag, his legs dangling over the edge. A good spot. A classic elf move. I smiled, figuring my husband, Tom, had moved him before he left for work. When Tom called me later that day, I thanked him. "Nice one with the elf this morning. You picked a great spot." There was a pause. "The elf?" I didn't touch it. I ended up running so late for work, Ginger peed all over the kitchen again. Between cleaning that up and losing my keys, I didn't have time. I swear the furball is just doing it for bad. "He's old Tom," I said defensively. "He's not naughty. He just gets a bit lost." Ginger was a 16-year-old marmalade tabby. More of a walking pile of bones than a cat at that point. He'd been with me since before I met Tom, before Leo was even a thought. A gentle, arthritic old soul whose most strenuous activity was moving from a sunbeam to a slightly different sunbeam. And yes, sometimes he lost his way and had an accident, but at this point, wasn't it expected? It was annoying, sure, but that cat had got me through some tough times. We'd had many an argument over Ginger and his toilet issues, and I didn't need a repeat. I quickly said my goodbyes, completely forgetting the doll mystery for a moment. The next day, I was arm deep in the toilet Leo had clogged with toilet paper, yet again when my soul almost left my body. I turned my head slightly, and there he was, Pip, perched on top of the shower curtain rod in the main bathroom, a place I know for a fact neither of us could reach without a step stool. I definitely didn't put him there. I asked Tom again. He looked at me, genuinely baffled, and swore he hadn't touched it. We just stared at each other for a second, a silent, shared "what the hell" passing between us. Then cold annoyance crept up my spine. Someone was lying, and it wasn't funny anymore. Maybe he just fell up there then, I scoffed. Don't be silly, Tom said gently. It's obviously someone. Yeah, I thought. Because if it's not, what's the alternative? The spots got stranger. One morning he was inside the closed cookie jar, sitting on a pile of Oreos. Another time he was tucked into the roll of paper towels, with only his head and hat sticking out. These were places that weren't just hard to get to. They required a degree of manipulation. Opening a jar, unraveling a roll. An unease began to curdle in my stomach. This was starting to feel less like a game and more like an intrusion. The whole idea of these elves is already unsettling if you think about it too much. Some experts have even questioned the psychological impact of these surveillance toys, how being constantly watched might affect kids. I'd always dismissed that as people overthinking a harmless tradition, but now it felt like real surveillance. My logical brain was scrambling for an explanation, and it landed on the most obvious one. Leo. It had to be him. An elaborate prank to get a rise out of me. It was exactly the kind of thing he would do. So, one evening, I sat him down. Leo, you know if you touch the elf, he will lose his magic, don't you? Yes, Mom, he replied innocently. I prepared myself for the lie he was about to tell, or the excuse he was going to give about how it was an accident, how he tripped and fell and the elf landed in his hand or something. The thing about Leo is, he's so bloody cute. He's the kind of kid that can lie straight to your face, and you'd still nod along because outing his deception just feels cruel. Yes, I know, it's probably my fault he is the way he is. But what can I say? If pretty privilege is a thing, so is cute privilege. Okay, baby. Well, let's just say if you accidentally moved him, or you know someone who did, if you tell me, we can make sure he gets his magic back. Are you the one moving Pip's sweetheart? I was expecting a cheeky grin, a proud confession. Instead, his face just crumpled. Tears welled up in his eyes, big, fat, genuine tears. No, Mummy, he sobbed, his whole body shaking. I hate him. He looks at me. I don't go near him. I was stunned. Leo was a terrible liar. He'd always get a little twitch in his eye or a smirk he couldn't hold back. This wasn't that. This was real fear, the kind of raw terror a parent knows instantly. My naughty, boisterous son, who wasn't afraid of monsters under the bed or the dark, was terrified of this little porcelain doll. And in that moment, watching him cry, a cold dread washed over me. If Leo wasn't moving the elf, and Tom wasn't, and I wasn't, then who was? When I had the house to myself, I decided to put the doll in the bottom drawer on the unit in the living room. If no one knew where I'd hidden it, no one would be able to move it. I should have just thrown it out, but something inside me just needed to see if it would move again. I busied myself decorating the living room, hanging tinsel, decorating the tree in Christmassy colours. desperate to get the creepy out of the house. I was sitting on the porch, putting the finishing touches on a handmade wreath, when I heard a crash from the living room. My heart almost exploded out of my chest. My first thought was the elf had escaped and had done something awful. I slowly pushed open the living room door, and my fear turned to embarrassment, then anger as I saw Ginger nonchalantly playing with a scrap of tinsel from the Christmas tree he had knocked over. "Ginger, you naughty boy," I scolded, shooing him away, a relieved chuckle escaping my lips. Of course it was the cat. I felt stupid thinking a toy could be to blame. I crawled along the floor, picking up loose baubles. My relief turned in my stomach as I saw the drawer, ever so slightly open. My heart hammered as I approached it, still on my hands and knees. Through the small slit, I could see it was still there, one small black eye glinting in the light. I swallowed hard and slammed the drawer shut tight. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house sounded like a footstep. Every shadow in the corner of my eye looked like a small figure in a red suit. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and went downstairs for a glass of water, my feet cold on the wood floors. I walked through the living room, sighing in relief as I saw the still-shut drawer. In the kitchen, the moonlight from the window cast long, eerie shadows, and I saw it. The top drawer, the one where we keep the sharp knives, was open. Just a crack. I froze. A cold dread rose in my chest, thinking about that afternoon. I told myself it was nothing. I probably didn't close it all the way after dinner. I took a step closer, my hand reaching out to push it shut, and then I looked down. There, nestled amongst the paring knives and the bread knife, was Pip. He was sitting upright, his back against a carving fork, his porcelain face turned towards the drawer handle, and his small, maroon-gloved hand was resting gently on the smooth, black handle of our largest, sharpest butcher knife. This wasn't a funny pose. It wasn't mischievous. It was cold, deliberate, a threat. The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a game. A child couldn't have done this. Leo was fast asleep upstairs. This was something else. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely function, but I reached in, my fingers brushing against the cold steel of the other knives, and snatched the doll out of the drawer. It felt cold, colder than porcelain should. I ran to the back door, fumbled with the lock, and just threw it out into the dark, frozen garden. I didn't care. I just wanted it out of my house. But even as I did it, I knew it was useless. A new, terrifying thought was taking root in my mind. I had to know for sure. The next night, after finding Pip sitting innocently on a lampshade as if nothing had happened, I waited until Tom and Leo were asleep. I grabbed the doll, marched out to the driveway, and locked it in the glove compartment of my car. I triple-checked that the car was locked. There was no way it could get out. The next morning I woke up with a knot of dread in my stomach. I walked downstairs holding my breath. The living room was quiet. I scanned the shelves, the tables, the chairs. Nothing. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. It was over. Maybe I'd been going crazy. Maybe there was a rational... And then I saw it. It was sitting on top of the television, directly facing the armchair where I always sit. Its head was tilted slightly to the side. That's when the real fear set in. Not the jumpy, nervous kind, but a deep, gnawing dread that settles in your bones. The house was no longer a home. It was a container, and I was trapped inside it with this thing. I stopped sleeping. I'd just sit up in bed for hours listening. I felt constantly watched, that prickling feeling on the back of my neck. So, I did what any sane person driven to the brink of insanity does. I went online. I fell down a rabbit hole of forums and message boards, reading stories on places like Reddit, stories about haunted dolls that moved on their own, antique objects that brought misfortune, stories about things that looked innocent but were vessels for something malevolent. It all sounded like fiction, like campfire stories. But as I sat there in my dark, silent house, reading about dolls that whispered in the night and toys that moved from room to room, it was the only thing that made any sense. Shutting it in the drawer didn't work. Locking it in the car didn't work. The only thing I could think of doing, until I found a safe way to get rid of it, was making sure we were locked away. From that night, Leo slept in our room, the only bedroom with a lock on the door. I told Leo it was a sleepover. I told Tom he was having nightmares. One Tuesday afternoon, around 4 or 5 days after this all started, we lost Ginger. I realised I hadn't seen him for a few hours. He was usually glued to my side, but he wasn't in any of his usual spots. I called his name. Nothing. Leo and I started a house-wide search. We checked under beds, in closets, behind the sofa. The knot of dread in my stomach, now a permanent resident, tightened. I don't know why I decided to check the basement. We barely used it. It was cold and damp, a concrete floor with a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. It smelled of earth and mildew. I pulled the string for the light, and the room flickered into a stark, bleak existence. And that's where I found him. Ginger was lying on the floor near the old furnace. He looked peaceful, curled up like he was sleeping. My heart broke. I knew, with his age, this day was coming. Tears streamed down my face as I knelt beside him. He was cold. He was gone. I was about to gently pick him up when I saw him. Pip was there, laying under his chin. One hand tucked under Ginger's collar. And that face, that placid, porcelain face with its thin red smile, was tilted up towards me. The glass eyes seemed to drink in the dim light, glinting with a horrifying, triumphant intelligence. Something inside me snapped. The grief for my old friend, my cat, collided with days of escalating terror and sleep deprivation. It ignited into pure white-hot rage. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I moved with a chilling, singular purpose. I ran up the basement stairs, out the back door, and grabbed the small spade we used for gardening. I marched back down into the basement, my knuckles white on the spade's handle. I couldn't bring myself to touch the doll. I slid the edge of the spade under Ginger's body and carefully, reverently, lifted him and carried him outside. After I had laid him gently in a box, I went back for the doll. I scooped it up with the spade. It clattered against the metal. I carried it at arm's length like it was radioactive to the very bottom of our long garden, to a patch of overgrown weeds behind the shed, and I started digging. I dug like a woman possessed, the rhythmic scrape and thud of the spade the only sound in the cold afternoon air. I dug until the hole was 3 feet deep. I dumped the doll in. It landed face up, its eyes staring up at the grey sky. I didn't hesitate. I shoveled the cold, damp earth back into the hole, burying it, burying the smile, burying the eyes. I packed the dirt down with my feet, stomping on it, wanting to crush it, to obliterate it. When I was done, I threw the spade as far as I could and went back inside, my hands raw, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I told Leo that Pip had to go back to the North Pole early for a special mission. He just nodded, a look of profound relief on his face. That night, for the first time in weeks, we both slept. For 3 days the house was quiet. The oppressive feeling had lifted. It was just a house again. We mourned Ginger. I told Tom I'd found him in the basement, that he'd passed peacefully. I didn't mention the doll. How could I? He'd think I was having a breakdown. I almost believed it myself. I convinced myself that the stress of the move, my grief over the cat, the lack of sleep, it had all conspired to create a waking nightmare. My mind had put the doll there. It had to be that. It was the only sane explanation. On the fourth night, I was reading in bed when I heard a sound, a faint scratching from the back door. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch. A raccoon, I told myself, a stray cat. I closed my book, turned off the light, and eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I came back from my run. I felt a little lighter. Leo was still sleeping in our room with Tom, and I was looking forward to a silent cup of coffee. The early morning sun was streaming through the kitchen window, and for a moment, everything felt normal. Then I saw the floor. There was a trail of small, dark clumps of dirt, leading from the back door, which was securely locked, across the clean kitchen tiles. My blood ran cold. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I followed the trail with my eyes. It led out of the kitchen, across the living room rug, and towards Spiral the stairs. Slowly, like I was in a trance, I followed the trail of dirt up the stairs. Each step took a lifetime. The trail was clear, unmistakable, on the light-coloured carpet. It continued down the hallway, past my bedroom, past the bathroom. It led directly, unerringly, to Leo's room. And there, right in front of his closed bedroom door, it sat. It was Pip. Caked in damp, dark earth. A leaf was stuck to his hat. There was a long, jagged crack running down the side of his porcelain face, right through one of his glass eyes, giving him a horrifying, splintered gaze. The painted red smile seemed wider, more malicious. He was just sitting there, waiting. And that brings us back to now. Back to me, whispering into my phone in the dark. I don't know how it got back in. The doors were locked, the windows were closed. I dug that hole so deep, I buried it. But it's back, and I think it's heading for my son. It doesn't know he's not in there. I don't know what this thing wants. I don't know what it is or what it's capable of. The man at the car boot sale, he said, make sure he's a good boy. I called the cat a naughty boy in front of the thing. Did Pip kill Ginger because he was naughty? Oh God, has it heard mine and Tom's conversations about Leo? What do I do? Please, if anyone has any idea what this is, what it wants, what do I do? How do I protect my son from a monster I invited into our home? Hi everyone, thanks for listening. Tonight's story was written by me. If you enjoyed the chaos, hit subscribe, like, and maybe join the membership so you can say I was here before she got weirdly famous. A massive shout out to my members. Or rather, member, Mark Mathern 7322. If you really, really enjoyed it, think I have that super thanks button down there somewhere. Even £1 helps me toward my goal of making this a full-time thing. Then I can just have one full-time thing instead of my day job and this full-time. I'm here a lot. Fun fact. My toxic trait is thinking I could win a fight against a haunted doll. I couldn't. I would absolutely die. Good night.